On this episode of Key to the City, I had the pleasure of speaking with Don Dickie from Ottawa, Canada. I'm going to let the conversation speak for itself, but you'll see, if you listen, how Don's experience in cognitive neuroscience, kinesiology, taekwondo, and Tibetan Buddhist meditation has enhanced his Aikido practice, particularly in freestyle, Randori. For more information about this episode, including links to Don's dojo and his written works, please check out my Substack at keytothecity.substack.com. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode.
My academic background is I have a degree in cognitive psychology, 2 degrees in kinesiology, the study of human movement, and a PhD. And the reason I bring that up is
PhD in what?
statistics and measurement. I trained auditors. I was a professional executive in auditors. But that side of my life, I just did to make money.
Right.
The other 3 degrees were much more important to me. And they really define how and what I teach because my area of specialty was acquisition of motor skills, but not the physical training of motor skills, though I have the background in biomechanics and exercise physiology to understand that. But it was more from the cognitive side.
Can we take a brief moment to talk about motor skills for a second? Because
Sure.
At a young age, my mother was told about me that I had poor small motor skills, right? And it's true. I can't really type fast. I can't play piano or guitar, things like that involve my fingers being dexterous.
Yeah.
I can't play guitar. I have just my fingers. My handwriting is really bad. So the term motor skills always kind of, whenever I hear it, I have to kind of explore it a little bit because I feel like my large motor skills more than compensate for my small motors. I have good large motor skills, if that's such a thing.
Oh, it is.
I could fly through the air and land. I could take big break falls, or whatever. I feel like that's large motor skills. So, or throwing people, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so go ahead.
We split motor skills into gross motor skills, which involve the large muscles in the body. And when you look at athletes, they start at a gross motor level. So you look at a tennis player, they learn how to run, change direction, hit a ball, and all of that's gross motor skill. But at some point, athletes need to develop fine motor skills. And the fine motor skills necessarily involve a finer tuning of their larger muscles and the inclusion of small muscles. So a tennis player can hit a ball and just whack it across the net. But if he wants to place it in a very specific position, he's got to alter the positioning of his hand while he hits the ball. So you have this interplay between fine motor and gross motor. For people that are non-athletic, the fine motor skills come up with the ones that you identified, the use of your hands and fingers. But we also have fine motor skills when we look at balance. So typically in the core, around the pelvis, the spine, the hips, there are all these dinky little muscles there, and the only reason they're there is to solidify that balance. Now, I experience a lot of that because in 2021, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a rare form of blood cancer. And one of the things that it has hit me with has been my physical ability to move, combined with a lot of fatigue.
So can I ask you, but when you still practice and teach Aikido, when you're on the mat, do you feel the movements of Aikido help with that?
They do until the fatigue hits in.
Okay.
So I can demonstrate. I don't fall anymore. And in the fall of 2023, I stepped down as chief instructor and I had one of my senior students take over. But I try and get into the dojo at least once a week, twice a week to teach a
Hmm.
class. And I can demonstrate, and I can do a tank on and be solid. But after about 45, 50 minutes, I'm pretty tired.
Hmm.
So, you just learn to roll with it. But the understanding of how you cognitively acquire motor skills. So we talk in Aikido about the mind, body, and the spirit. This whole mind component is the cognitive aspect of motor skills. And it's important to address it. And I don't believe, excuse me, I don't believe the majority of the instructors out there actually address it.
What they don't address what? The mind-body connection?
They don't, well, when people say the words about the mind body spirit connection, but they never say how. So, how do you know? How do you know you're training the mind and the body together?
Well, you have a degree in cognitive neuroscience and kinesiology, which means that you've academically studied the mind and the body, right?
Exactly.
And through Aikido, you're trying to learn how to establish a better connection.
Well, know,
And I know it's a complex topic, but
no, it's one of the most fascinating posts you posted was with the gentleman from Denmark, the philosopher.
oh yeah, that was a really good conversation. I don't know how many people have actually heard it, but
It was
I mean
very good.
his parts were good. Mine were just kind of stupid,
No,
but
they
he's
weren't bad at all because you need to have that response back. But he made a really good point that language is a very difficult barrier to cross. And when we talk about mind body connection, are you talking about the two are doing this? Or are you talking about the two are operating together? Like, or are you talking about the body is handling it by itself and the mind is doing something different? You
well,
know, it's,
I could give you like my very rustic interpretation of it, like what it means for me during my practice when
yeah,
I'm not like trying to think it like lofty metaphysical terms. I'm just thinking in terms of like
yeah,
physicality. It's honestly it's just being able to like move my arm and my leg in different ways at the same time while I'm turning around and then picking this up and then dropping this down and then doing this. It's like my mind has to I have to be able to motor myself through those things, right?
yeah.
So like my mind has to be in my body the whole time. I can't start like so to me it's more like putting my mind in my body than
So,
instead of like being elsewhere thinking about others, thinking about problems or situations, it's just I'm in my body. My mind is in my body. That's
first of all, we know the mind is between your ears, right?
well, I
So
mean,
what
the last
I understand, but I'm making that point very deliberately because when you say your mind is in your body, but the example that you're giving is you are thinking about how you're moving your body. You are assessing it. You are aware of your body movements.
yeah, right.
Okay, so short term memory in the mind is like this big. It is so small. So if you're in, for example, Randori, and you have multiple attackers coming at you, and your mind is focused on the technique that you're doing, then you have no awareness about what's going on around you, what's going on with your body, because you're so focused on thinking about the technique. So I do not believe that is mind body connection or harmony. It just means you're thinking about your technique. And you may become a very good technician in Aikido.
Well,
But
I think it also has to do with being present in the like you're there. Like I'm at the dojo. My whole body and mind is at the dojo. My
so
because like right now I'm sitting in this chair, but my mind will be all over the world. You know,
okay.
but while I'm
So
at the dojo, my mind is with me.
so let me stop you there. I'm going to finish my little biography and then we're talking about Buddhism because what you just summarized is the dilemma of Buddhists.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so that gives you the academic Aikido. I've been practicing and teaching for over 45 years. Um, I reached about third Q where I came to the realization that the Aikido attacks were just not not biomechanically sound. They were not generating power. People were just throwing out showmans and skis, but they had nothing behind them. So I started studying Taekwondo, and for 10 years I studied Taekwondo and Aikido together. And then at the end of 10 years, chose to focus just on Aikido. Meditation, I started meditating when I was in university. And about 20 years ago, I um, decided I needed formal instruction. So I went to a Tibetan lineage called Shambhala. It's based on the Kagyu and Nyingma Tibetan lineages. And since then, I have been formally meditating and following their meditation practices. And the last part you need to know, and we'll get to it when we talk about Qi, is I spent 10 years studying Taoist Qigong.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so you learn some very interesting things about Qi. And Taoist Qigong has a documented history back 2,500 years, as long as Buddhism. And so it's a very rich environment. So, all that to say, let me bring you back to Buddhism. The biggest challenge, people talk about being in the present moment, and then people ask, so what does it mean, being in the present moment? It's not like I'm here. Because if your mind is thinking about something, then you're not here. You
Right.
know, to be here, you have to devote your attention to something that is happening right now, which is why when we learn meditation, Buddhists focus on their breath because they know the breath is happening right now. And what they do, and the whole practice of Buddhism or meditation, is it's not about the sitting. It's about recognizing when a thought or emotion comes up and then bringing your attention back to your breath. And what that helps establish is you are in a space that is totally present and not bothered by other thoughts, emotions, dinner tomorrow night. None of that is impinging on that space. The reality is you can only hold that space for seconds, maybe a minute, and then a thought comes up and you have to say thank you, focus back on your breath. So it's a constant process of recognizing when thoughts come up, letting go of them, and going back to your breath. And the reason why that is so important, and there's a gentleman in Minneapolis, Steve Hagen, who is a Zen Buddhist Roshi. He sums it up in his book that meditation is all about awareness. You want to be in a state of awareness where you are not focusing on any one thing, but you're aware of everything. So you have that state so that you know thoughts are still coming up. things are happening over there, and you're not getting caught up on them. And when you do get caught up on a thought or an emotion, you do it consciously. So you are deliberately choosing to investigate that thought. When we take that model and we apply it into Aikido, then we're looking at how do we develop that overall awareness while we're doing technique. And you can't be focusing on technique because the short term memory is only this big. Focus on technique, you have no space for awareness. If you choose to focus on awareness, you have to know your technique cold. So you can do it with minimal oversight from your brain. Now, one of your first interviewers, Nicola from London, he talked about perception and that overall perception of what is happening around you in his job as a bouncer and as an Aikido instructor. And it was very interesting because we train this overall awareness really only two ways. One is in the dojo when people are dealing either with high speed attacks, complicated attacks, or multiple attackers, and you actually are constantly coaching your student, keep your eyes up, focus on your peripheral vision, see the space, do not focus on technique, just perform technique and just keep moving. The other way is meditation, and combine meditation with the same goal to get that overall awareness. So when you ask me about harmony of mind body, for me, it's when you have that awareness and are able to allow your body to act with minimal oversight, and you maintain the awareness of what's happening in space around you, inside your own body, inside your own mind. So most people don't train that, in my experience, in visiting summer camps and seminars. I'd say the majority of people mouth body, mind, spirit, but do they actually know how to train them and actually work on bringing them together so they're working in harmony? No, I don't think so. I think the majority of people just practice on technique and become very good technicians. And they sometimes confuse the positive feelings and outcomes that you have after performing good technique with, oh, that must be body, mind, spirit. But I can assure you from the mind part, that does not work. And if you need evidence, just go look at the professional athletes and see how they're going through their training. Half of it is body, and then half of it is you got to learn where to place the ball, and you've got to do it on the run. And while you're placing that ball, you need to be aware of where's your opponent moving. And none of those are physical skills. They're all mind skills that you have to train. So for me, it's two very different things that work in harmony together. Does that make sense to you, John?
Yeah, I mean, I, I mean, this might sound just ridiculous, but a simpler way for me to explain how what Aikido exercise feels like to me is it feels like I'm playing Tetris with my body. You know the game Tetris?
No, but you're a different
It's
generation than me.
well, Tetris was really popular. It's a game where they're like different shaped blocks come down the screen, and
Oh, yes, okay.
you have to fit them into other blocks. And when you fit the blocks in correctly, the lines disappear, right?
Yeah,
That was the only game I was good at. Like I told you, my small motor skills were poor, so I was never good at video games, right?
yeah,
So, but Tetris I was good at because you only had to press one button. You just had to move the lines over and flip them around so they fit. So that was easy. But it was you're using your mind to fit the blocks in, and your finger has to move it to where it goes, right?
yeah,
And in Aikido, I feel like I have to fit my body into these four-dimensional shapes, right? Like these spherical four-dimensional shapes. I have to like plug my own body into them as uke on one side, as nage on the other. And that physical practice requires like an extra dimension of thought, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I get out of the physical practice. And then all of the philosophy surrounding it, I try to figure out if what I'm getting out of the physical practice matches up with what anybody else is talking about. And if not, it makes me have to like kind of consider like, okay, so what are they talking about? And what am I trying to get out of this? You know, what
Yeah. Well, I am unconvinced that a lot of people out there know what they're talking about. But let
well,
me go.
I think people are trying to communicate, even if they don't know what they're talking about. They're trying to
That's true.
they're communicating something. They're
There,
trying.
there are
I don't
people
know. I don't know
questing.
if I don't think I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes words just start coming out of my mouth, and I'm like I'll start a sentence without knowing where it's going to
Yeah.
finish, like all the time. You know, so
So
we're all.
I want you to imagine, John, doing a technique, no matter how simple or how complex, where you don't have to think about it at all. It just happens.
Yeah, well, I don't think about this. Like I don't. The way by now I've been practicing so long and so many hours that I just look at the other person and just if they're attacking me, I just look at them as like clay that I'm going to shape up into a ball and throw it. Right.
So,
And if I'm attacking them, I just think, okay, I'm going to just try to attack them and then see what happens and react. So I don't really think when I practice. It's more just like having to not have my mind be wandering. Like I can't be thinking about uh, problems in the world while I'm practicing because I might get hit in the head with a bokken, you know.
yeah.
So that's what I mean. I just have to be focused and attentive in the moment.
So a Buddhist instructor would say, and please don't take offense, that you've just exchanged one series of thoughts for another series of thoughts. You haven't actually, you aren't actually in the present moment. You're just thinking about something else. Being in the present moment means there's nothing happening. You're just an overall awareness.
Yeah,
That's all there is.
unfortunately, maybe I will probably never give that up in my life. Like
So, John,
I
do
would never
not underrate yourself.
I would never willingly submit my thought process like and be like, okay, I'm going to stop thinking here because what if you know maybe because
Well,
I'm from New York and I think there's always like somebody might be trying to kidnap me if you know what I mean, like.
yes. So, not thinking or not getting caught up in thoughts does not mean you lose touch with reality on what's happening around you. You just replace it with an overall awareness of everything. And I've
Oh
seen
yeah,
people
right.
that, it takes work and it takes practice. And particularly on the mats, when you have people who are meditators as well as aikidoists, you can see it in their flow. They just move from technique to technique. One doesn't work, who cares? They just keep moving. And it's beautiful to watch. And then you realize, oh, that's what harmony means. Oh, Sensei has a really neat quote that says, when you're in that space where you have this overall awareness of what's going on, you're on a bridge halfway between heaven and earth. And you just have that feeling. Now, the reality is it takes effort to maintain it. And typically, in my experience, when I try and maintain it, I can hold it for 30, 40 seconds, and then boom, I've lost it and I have to regain it again, hold it for another, and then I lose it and I pull it back again. But the whole crux of Buddhism is they want people to be aware when thoughts and emotions are governing their actions. So now you're moving because you're afraid, or you're moving because you want to do that. And Buddhists don't say whatever that is right or wrong. What we say is, are you sure that's what you want to do? So make a conscious choice that, if you want to open your mouth and swear at a person, then take a moment and make sure that is actually what you want, and then do it. If you decide that's not what you want, then don't do it. But that ability to be aware that I have a strong emotion or a strong thought that is actually governing my actions, that takes a lot of practice, because most people are so caught up in the thought, the argument, the emotion, that they don't step back and actually examine, am I doing or saying this because it's the right thing to do or say, or am I doing it just because I'm feeling so strongly?
Can you tell me which branch of Buddhism you belong to again?
I belong to Shambhala, and the
Is that's Tibetan
it
Buddhism?
is Tibetan.
Is that considered tantric Buddhism?
It is a derivative of Tantric Buddhism.
Okay.
So the gentleman who founded it is Chungya Trungpa Rinpoche. He's dead now, and his son, Mipam Rinpoche, is the spiritual leader of Shambhala. And Trungpa was the lineage holder for both the Kagyu and the Nyingma schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So though we're Shambhala, the word Shambhala is caught up in Tantra. We actually draw more on the two Tibetan lineages to give the Shambhala teachings. The Shambhala teachings, so this is a modern day lineage, and one of the, so I've lost, I see, it's telling me it's uploading. One of the interesting things about Shambhala is one of its objectives was to bring meditation out of the monasteries and to actually bring it into everyday life.
What does the meditation entail? Like, just can you describe briefly to me, like, your meditation?
So it's sitting meditation, but put quotes around sitting, because the Buddha never said you had to sit cross-legged. It just happened Buddhism originated in the East, and they mostly sit cross-legged. So there's sitting cross-legged, but you can actually do it lying down.
That's what I was going to ask, because that's been my biggest obstacle to meditation, is sitting down.
Oh, no. I was in Myanmar at a Buddhist temple, and it was the first time I saw murals of the Buddha in 5 different positions: lying down, sitting cross-legged, sitting in a chair, standing, and walking. So you can do meditation in all of those, but you've got to realize that, first, the other characteristic of some of the Tibetan meditation lineages is we meditate with eyes open, not eyes closed. So when Shambhala took it over, it was, yes, you're going to meditate with eyes open, but you are also going to focus on the edges of the visual field, which is your peripheral vision, which is very applicable to martial arts, because the periphery is sensitive to movement and distance. So we actually use that in things like Randori to tell Where are the attackers? How fast are they moving? And what direction are they going in?
Oh, wait a minute. This is really deep. Let me just like
Deep?
explore. Yeah. So your eyes are open while you're meditating, but your focus is on the peripheral
Yep.
the whole time you're meditating.
Yep. Now, you're going to lose it every now and then because we are trained from birth to look straight ahead. And in those instances, we're using the center of the retina, which is for detailed vision. So the number of rods and cones, the parts, I told you I had a physiology background, right?
Mm-hmm.
The number of rods and cones differ between the periphery and the central. The central part is for detail, for reading, for writing, counting, whatever it is you're looking at. And we're trained from birth to use the center. When you look at indigenous people, particularly indigenous people with very little contact with the various civilizations, they use the periphery more.
Mm.
They're out hunting and doing. So it's a skill that we have that we've lost. So in Shambhala with the instructors I had, we would sit there and put our attention, which is a cognitive process, on the periphery. And you do it simultaneously. It's quite easy. If you sit and look straight ahead and then put your attention, do not move your eyeballs, just your attention on the upper edge. You can see the upper edge without moving your eyes. And now you do it to the lower edge, and then to the right, and then to the left. And now bring your focus back and look straight ahead, and now go to all four edges simultaneously. And you can do it. But when I teach students, they are so used to using the center of the retina that when they do Kotegaeshi, they stare at their hands. And you can see your hands at the lower edge of the visual field. You don't need to move your eyes, much less your head, to see them. Because they're there. Just move your hands, clap your hands, and while you stare ahead and you move your hands, you can still see them.
I feel like Randori is a very good exercise for that. Because that's when you're describing that vision, like that's the type of vision I'm trying to employ during Randori. Like
exactly.
But but just now I was thinking when I'm thinking about something, right? If I'm like my vision isn't focused, but my eyes are open and I'm thinking about something, I realize that I either like look to the left or my eyes try to get that peripheral vision while I'm thinking about something. Because if I'm thinking about something, I'm not focused, right? Your eyes, like if you're just sitting there, your eyes are open and you're kind of lost in thought. Like, which direction are you looking? Like, sometimes maybe I look up. Sometimes you look to the right. Sometimes you are focused on the peripheral. That's interesting.
Well, so let me correct some of it. When you have an overall awareness, in other words, your attention is on the periphery, you aren't thinking about anything. Like there are no thoughts. Remember, the short-term memory is very small.
Right. But
So,
I said I achieved that in Randori.
I know.
Right? But then that made me start to wonder about what does it say about the vision you're holding while you're thinking? And if you could stop thinking, is that just a matter of going peripheral?
So for me, the thing that I'm holding, and I'm not sure if that's the right word, is my attention on the periphery. I'm not examining the periphery. So every morning I do my meditation in front of a large window, and right opposite me is a very large church that's doing construction. So I have people walking by, cars, trucks going by all the time. And my challenge is keep my focus on the periphery. And even while those visual distractions are happening, don't focus on the distractions. Just let them be. Now, it takes practice because you also want to learn. So that's a person walking without having to focus on them. Just like in Randori, you want to be able to learn that that body movement you're seeing from the left is a person coming in with a yokomen. It takes practice to be able to recognize that without turning and looking. But it's achievable. And at least in our dojo, Randori, we start training our students in Randori in the kids class. Mm-hmm. So 5th Q people during their test will do Randori. So by the time they get to the Dan ranks, they are comfortable with having 4 or 5 people attacking them. And then we can start working on how do we get that overall awareness of what's going on around you without focusing on any one individual person.
Yeah, I mean, I think Randori and Jiwaza are like a very, very important part of practice. If I feel like if I don't do that, I'm not really learning anything because I want to learn what happens in between the techniques. Not just the techniques, right?
Exactly. So, John, you're on the right track. Just keep going. Don't let people tell you any difference.
Yeah, I don't really listen to what people say anyway, honestly.
I want to talk a bit about the spirit. And, there are 2 of your podcasts really, well, the one with the philosopher I thoroughly enjoyed.
And Thank you. Me too.
The interesting thing was on language, he was saying the same term might have 2 different very meanings depending on the culture. And that does not invalidate one meaning over the other meaning. It just means they're different. The other thing that really impressed me was the professor. Now, I have to admit, I did not understand any of it until he got to the last 5 minutes. And the last 5 minutes blew me away because he said, and I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong. He said, the seeds of being able to connect with the divine are present in all of us. They're there. It's up to the individual to figure out a way of connecting and bringing the divine into them. And I went, that is very true. So you originally, when we first started talking, and the thing that got me interested in your podcast, other than Ki, was, is Aikido a spiritual path? For me, it is a spiritual path. I don't believe I'm saying this because for the last week I was telling myself, no, it's not. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. But it is, if I use the Taoist definition of spirit. The Taoists believe there are 3 pillars. The body, which we train physically, the mind, which we train through meditation, and the spirit pillar is creativity. Being able to generate new things. And you could see that historically in Japan, in the samurai, where poetry, painting, flower arranging, the arts, they were all participating by samurai as well, that creative aspect. For me in Aikido, it's all about Randori. Sensei said the biggest advantage of Aikido is being able to adapt to changing conditions. And that's what Randori is. And so when I watch Randori, people doing it, I can tell that, okay, they've got awareness of space because they're moving into spaces rather than to people and bringing people to them on their own terms. And they're creating new techniques. They just come up which O-sensei always said it's a present from the gods. But for
Mm,
me, it's intuition. If you have that open awareness, then everyone has intuition and it just bubbles up and things come up. Most people can't hear it, and the ones that do don't trust it. So you've got to get to that phase where it happens. So when I watch those people practicing that way, for me, that is a spiritual path.
mm,
But I believe you're interpreting spirit differently. You're looking at it from the Western context. I do not believe Aikido by itself would be a spiritual path in that context. But then when I tried to pick out three spiritual people that I am aware of. Well, I tried to pick out more than that, but I only came up with three. There's O-sensei, there's Desmond Tutu from South Africa, and there's the Dalai Lama. So three people in very different lineages at very different times. But I would consider those three people to be very spiritual. And then you ask yourself, so how did they get there? Well, Catholicism definitely isn't a spiritual path by itself when I look at it. Too many atrocities happening there. So that led me to believe, and this ties in with your professor, that there is a spiritual path, but the thing that's common across all of those is the uniqueness of the individual. I don't believe you could achieve what you're looking for if you only did Aikido. However, I strongly believe that with the other practices that you're investigating plus Aikido, that could make a spiritual path for you that is unique for you to achieve what you're looking for. Does that make sense?
it makes sense. Yeah, one thing you said that I want to just push back a little bit on is you said I'm looking at the word spiritual from a Western context. And like so far, I haven't even really formulated what I think about Aikido as a spiritual practice. I'm still thinking about it, right? And through my research into O Sensei's spiritual practices that he participated in his life, what I kind of discovered is that he was doing I don't know spirit I just keep using spiritual practices and I feel like it gets overused. So like but he was doing Shinkon Kishin, right?
Yeah.
He was doing this meditative practice that was kind of geared towards communicating with the spirit world, right?
Yeah.
So it was shamanic in nature to me, right? He was participating in like trying to communicate with the spirit world, and then through the guidance of the spirit world, he created Aikido for people to practice as a discipline, right?
So
So,
let me stop you because that last sentence and everything you said up to that, I totally agree with
hmm.
completely. Now, I should also tell you I'm married to a shaman.
Oh wow.
So the spirit world is present in our home, and I have dialogues with him on what the spirits are doing. And so I am totally in belief with that. But you said it a different way than I've heard you say it before. You said, oh, Sensei in his other practices was able to create Aikido as a separate practice. And I totally agree with that. But I don't think O-sensei could achieve his spiritual enlightenment if he only did Aikido. I think he
No, because
needed those other practices.
right, Aikido was the product of the combination of all of them.
That's right. That does not necessarily make Aikido a spiritual path in and by itself. And I guess I worry about that. I worry about
No, but it was born from a spiritual cognition.
exactly.
So it's like in a sense it's like a divine practice because it came out of of whether you believe it or not. I lean animistic in my thoughts, so I believe in this. Whatever. I might sound crazy, but okay, I believe in the gods or whatever, right? But even if you don't, the fact is the phenomenon of it happening is interesting. That there was this guy who was really good at martial arts, and he was like communicating with spirits that told him to like make his martial art a martial art of peace, and it worked. Like it like spread around the world. So like that's an interesting thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you believe in it as a spiritual path or not, it's still interesting. I
Yes.
I that story behind it gives it enough credibility to me that while I'm practicing it, I can just feel that it's a spiritual practice, whether I understand it at the moment or not. I can kind of just because people go to church and like and pray and kneel and do the rosaries and stuff, and they don't always understand what they're doing, but it has some sort of value to them. Whatever it does for them psychologically. It's a practice that was developed for spiritual purposes. And I feel like Aikido was kind of developed for spiritual purposes as much as physical.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But just a point that the common thing in that is you. You're the one that is experiencing it, and you have other practices that you do as well, which
Right.
doesn't invalidate it at all. You also asked me about ki, and that was the other thing that pulled me into this discussion with you. So, for me, there is no doubt in my mind ki exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think it's a waste of time discussing whether it exists or not. It's just a matter of time before people develop a way of measuring it and mapping it out and seeing that it exists. But we already have evidence in the research that shows that we have electrical currents running under our skin. And we know from the research that these electrical currents have health benefits. So, like, it's there. We have a whole area of Asian health practices, notably acupuncture, that are all based on qi. Like,
Mm.
there is just so much stuff out there that qi exists. To me, it's like, let it go and stop arguing. And if you don't wish to believe in qi, that's like 200 years ago, someone saying, you have a spleen. And they go, no, I don't
Mm.
believe in a spleen. Well, it doesn't matter because the spleen's in there and it'll keep operating the way it is. So your belief is totally irrelevant. The real question is, do you want to leverage the benefits of qi? And if you don't, well, then just continue on. If you do, though, qi follows several principles, and there's two that really resonated for me, particularly with regard to aikido. The first is posture is critical. It is just so critical. Qi flows like water. It moves through the body. You don't have the proper posture, qi doesn't flow. And it's why in Taoist Qigong, all of their practices, they are so picky about posture. It's got to be exactly this way, moving your hands exactly this way. And it has years and years of practice to get those postures. So that's the first thing, and it applies very well to Aikido from both a ki and a biomechanical aspect, that when you throw and if you bend over at the waist, guess what? Ki isn't flowing and your hips can't twist. So can you throw with power? Of course you can, but you're using muscle power. And when you get to my age, you don't have a lot of muscle left. So you've got to recognize there's a reason why we want an upright posture. We don't want to have these bends in, and it's like just watch the Doshu a couple of times because he has beautiful posture. Another one that does is Saotomi Sensei. But with all due respect to the late Yamada Sensei, he had lousy posture, and anyways, posture is one of them. The other,
Yeah, I don't have good posture.
uh,
I started with judo. I practiced judo in high school, and
yeah,
I never was able to lose that posture. Like I kind of practice aikido with a judo posture. So it's I try, but if I make my back too straight, it hurts. So I have to kind of like
yeah. So
I have to stay like slouched a little. I have to keep that like relaxed
that's the
feeling.
point. So you never want to be rigid in your posture. So when I say upright, I don't
I
mean you
feel
have to be like
I feel
this.
like I feel like a lot, and this is I don't want to get in trouble with this comment, but I feel like sometimes Aikido is posing too much. Like posing and posture kind of blend together, and
I
I know
know.
not everybody can look a certain way when they do a technique, and there's a whole segment of people that judge the techniques based on how they look from a symmetry point of view,
Yeah.
as opposed to just if the person could pull it off and it flows and it moves in a circle. It's like, to me, that's the important part, not the shape of their body as they do it so much,
Yeah.
as long as they're following the right principles.
So I have students who do that and they almost pose at the end. And I tell them, if you pose much longer, I'll bring in a bouquet of flowers and just toss them to you because we don't need the posing. But just as an aside, when I teach, one of the things that disillusioned me when I went to summer camps and seminars is it was all about having these huge acrobatic falls. And you get so caught up in the ukemi that you're no longer attacking. And now I believe that what Sensei was after, and he hints at it, but I don't think he ever really comes out and says it, is that you want to put Uke in a position where he chooses to disengage. It is not about throwing Uke. It's about putting them in a position where they go, I have to disengage, and you allow them to disengage. And that gets around this egocentric behavior of big falls and lousy attacks. And now it's just about putting the person the right way. I know we're getting close to the time, so let me tell you the other thing about Ki. And I trained in Qigong under a Taoist lineage holder from Hong Kong. And it's very unusual having a lineage holder of Qigong teaching. But she came to the US and started offering classes through Shambhala as a gift to the Tibetan lineage. And we got access to this, whereas when you go to the East, you see instructors in Qigong, but you'll never see the lineage holders. So this was a joy to actually talk to someone. She's an author of numerous books on Qigong and Feng Shui and the immortals of China, and she's just very educated, PhD in math and a concert pianist.
Wow.
Yeah, sort of mind-blowing. But one of the things she emphasized is Qi moves through the body to where it's needed, because Qi is the basis of the Chinese health practices. So it moves where it's needed. So when you ask her, so how does the key know where it's needed? And she says, the key goes to where there's the most activity. So if you've injured your knee, it disrupts the key around the knee, so key will flow to the knee to be able to heal the knee. But if you sit back and you think about my knee, fix my knee, key flows to your brain because there's more activity in your brain than there is in the knee.
Oh, whoa.
Isn't that mind-blowing? So if
Yeah.
you're going to leverage the benefits of key, particularly in posture or health or throwing or controlling, you can't be thinking about the technique. Because if you're thinking about the technique, the key flows to the head. Now you see how that fits with meditation.
Mm.
See, they sort of all come together when you start putting it into an Aikido context, that if we want to leverage the benefits of ki, then we have to have that open awareness in our minds so we don't interfere where it flows. We have to have the right posture in order to perform the techniques so we can leverage that ki. Oh, Sensei said another neat thing. He said, the way you connect ki to the rest of what's happening around you. Now, he talked about universal ki, but for me, it was more the space in which you're in, is through your breath.
Mm.
So it rides with your breath. It was the common element to be able to get the ki mind body connection, all connected through breath. And what's the focal point for meditation? Your breath. When we practice and we're generating power, we use ki. We do kokyus, breath throws. It forms a really nice circle that includes all of it. You're thinking, John, which is a good thing.
Oh yeah, I mean that's kind of like right now. That's my job to think about what to say next. Right, I have to absorb all that what you just said, which is not easy because it's it's deep. The practice is deep to me because
it is very deep, and many students that go into Aikido aren't interested in it. But
I feel like I talk like. It's the practice is really deep to me, but there's a part of me that really does enjoy just like throwing people and then being thrown. Like there's that part of it, like the action figure part of me, and really enjoys that. Like I was just
you should do it. I mean, I went through that too.
I'm guilty of not right now because I've slowed down a lot. But what you said before, where like the big break falls like took over the practice, that big break falls took over my practice for years. Like I was just trying to figure out how to do break falls from every single technique, and I got pretty good at it. Just taking break falls from everything, and that consumed me for like years. I was just like, I just want to take break falls from everything because I felt like the physical practice, like, kind of wakes me up so much that it makes the rest of my life kind of feel easier to deal with in a way. There's like a physical benefit from taking break falls. It like wakes you up, like it shocks you into right.
And you never want to lose that. What people.
I don't do them so much lately, but
no.
I was like.
But think of your Aikido. You've been practicing Aikido for over 20 years. So think of those 20 years. Oh, Sensei never promised whatever his vision of enlightenment was, that you'd get it in the first year. You have to work through all of this. It's part of the natural progression. And to have the dialogue that you and I are having would never have been possible if you were third Q or second Q. You didn't have enough experience yet. You need to go through all those phases.
Mm.
And the risk we have are the people that are unable to adapt to their aging bodies and end up dropping out because they've never explored the other dimensions of Aikido.
Mm.
One of the instructors that made such a huge impression on my training was Mary Heine Sensei. She is now 80 years old, still
Mm.
teaching on the West Coast, still practicing, you know, and I want to be like her, well, provided I last that long. But, you know, I want to be able to still go in and do one class, two classes a week and be able to teach and interact with students and talk to them about it. But it took me 40 plus years to get here
Mm.
and be able to sit down and go, this is now what I believe in. And it takes time. So kudos to you that at 20 plus years, you're actually raising really good questions, questions that have got to find answers. And they're, whatever the answers are you come up with, you will still add a new dimension to Aikido. And that's what it's all about. It's about making the world a better place. It's not about believing one thing. So keep doing what you're doing, my friend.
That's a huge compliment that I don't think I deserve. I don't really think I'm making the world a better place. Like I'm just trying to like talk about things I'm interested in, and communicate.
You
Like,
know, enlightenment comes in many different shapes. So when I became a chief instructor, I was faced with the decision, do I follow the seminar circuit, which the majority of people were doing, or do I build a community? And you know, I was the only senior ranked black belt in the dojo, which meant I, for about 10 years, taught all the classes. Now I still worked full time. So I'd be teaching a 6 a.m. class, going to work, come back from work, go straight to the dojo, teach two classes, finish at 9, go home, crash, and then do it again, and then in on the weekends. But I believed it was more important to establish a community that branched out from the students to include their families, their friends, the businesses around us, and bring them all together as one community to support each other, than running around and following the she-hens to their seminars.
mm.
And that's what I did. And the biggest payback we got for 30 years, 40 years of doing that is we survived COVID. We came through and we are still practicing. We're the longest running dojo in the city for
Wow.
Aikido. So, you know, it's, you have a belief, you go for it, and it really doesn't matter what other people think. You know, they've got to follow their own paths and figure out how they do it. But I teach Aikido is about making the world a better place. And if you can only do it by helping one homeless person, well, then do that. Because it's one step in the right direction. And if we all work together, we can build a better world. But you got to start somewhere. And that's why, you know, the questions you're posing are good, because for whatever else it accomplishes, it forces people to think about them and question, what am I doing here? You know, am I just throwing my body around to sweat, or am I here for something else? Or you need to harmonize mind, body, and spirit. Well, how do you do that? How do you know you're harmonizing? You know, if they start questioning, then they'll start looking for answers. And when they look for the answers, it'll change how they interact with their students, their peers. You know, what
So,
more could you ask for?
so I think Aikido is a good exercise for people who are already kind of in that mode. on that quest already. Aikido is like the exercise for those kind of people. That's how I kind of view it. Like, there's people who are on a little bit of a quest in life, to achieve more like insight, spiritual insight or whatever. And then if they're also kind of physical minded, that Aikido attracts them because it has this like um cosmology attached to it. It has a philosophy attached to it. There's
Hmm.
like literature about it, whatever. But then you go and it's fun to do too. So it attracts people who are already kind of in that mind state a little bit. I don't know if people who aren't in that mind state practice, if it will lead to that mind state or not. If they might, like you said, they might just view it as a fun practice to get sweaty and like learn how to throw
Yeah.
people, learn how to like, but
When I put together my dojo, one of the things I got burned early on by having sharing a dojo with other martial arts, and
mm,
I swore I'd never do it again. And then, 25, maybe 30 years ago, it's a long time, I had a young jitsu guy come to me with his wife and ask if they could start a practice. And I interviewed him, and he had the same sort of direction I was going in. And I went, okay, Jitsu is a root art of Aikido.
mm-hmm.
We'll do it. And about 10 years after that, one of my students was a Kenjutsu instructor. And Kenjutsu is the other root art of Aikido. I went, go for it.
Mm,
The important thing is people come looking for different paths. And the saying we have in our dojo is 4 paths, 1 spirit. So we offer Kenjutsu, Jujitsu, Iaido, and Aikido.
well, that's
I
cool.
encourage
That's
my
like samurai. It's like samurai training school.
It is. And we set up our fee structure that allows people at no additional cost to cross train.
Whoa.
Cross training is so important, so I push the junior students, go and do 6 months of jitsu. You just come Thursday nights rather than Wednesday nights and learn
Mm,
how to punch, learn how to kick. And you can do it while you're doing Aikido. That's what I did, but it at least gives you the mechanics of striking. And
what
if
are
you're
the classes? What are the classes you offer again?
Aikido, Jujitsu, Kenjutsu is all the bladed weapons,
Right.
and then Iaido. We put
Oh,
in
wow.
Iaido because it's the popular weapons work that seems to be in the Aikido community now, and it
Yeah,
was
we have all of those at my dojo too, except for Kenjutsu. There's a jujitsu school at my dojo too.
yeah. So it allows people to intermix, choose a path, and then figure out what do you want to be your primary path and
Mm.
supplementary ones. And it's worked out very well, particularly going through COVID, because it was the support on those 4 areas that helped pull us through so that we
Yeah,
survived.
that's really great. So
Now,
tell people, okay, so we're pretty much out of time, but you could just tell people like where the dojo is and if they ever want to drop by and visit.
sure, it's Ottawa, Akikai. So we're in the nation's capital of Canada.
Cool.
And you'll see us, we're on in social media, or if you just type in Ottawa Akikai as one word,
I'll put a
.com,
link. I'll put a link.
you'll end up at our school. And if you're ever visiting in Ottawa, being the nation's capital, we constantly have visitors. So
Cool.
feel free of charge, drop in, come and do a class with us and see how it's done.
I will. I'm going to try to get up there one day.
Okay, sounds good.